Lena, the brilliant CEO, watched her $500 million investment sink like a stone. She needed a miracle, but only found Marcus, the night janitor, quietly mopping. In a moment of panic and wicked humor, she decided to mock the situation. "Tell me, Mr. Marcus, where should I put my money?" Stay to the very end to know what made her stunned at his first words. Kindly endeavor to like, subscribe, and comment what you learnt if you find this story intriguing. The 80th floor of the Zenith Tower felt like the loneliest place on Earth, even with all its glass and polished chrome. Lena was used to this floor being a buzzing beehive of success, but tonight it was silent, heavy, and cold. Outside, the city lights sparkled, but they offered her no comfort. They were just tiny, distant witnesses to the massive failure happening inside her office. Lena had built her empire, Titan Global, from a single loan and a brilliant idea. She was known as the Iron Lady of Finance, a young black woman who navigated the world of billion-dollar deals with grace and steel. But tonight, that steel felt like wet clay. She had made a gamble, a big one. She had poured $500 million, money that wasn't just hers, but belonged to thousands of hard-working people who trusted her, into a new clean energy company. It was supposed to double their returns. Instead, the deal had hit a catastrophic snag, and the stock price was tumbling. The news reports were starting to whisper, and tomorrow morning, the whispers would turn into roars. She had until 9 a.m. to figure out a move that could save it all, or she'd lose everything. She paced her large, silent office. Her silk suit felt too tight, her expensive shoes suddenly heavy. She ran her hands over her perfectly braided hair, which felt surprisingly hot. She was usually so cool, so controlled. Tonight she felt like a child lost in a big, scary house. She walked out of her office and onto the executive floor, needing to move. The vast, empty space was only occupied by one person, Marcus. Marcus had been the night janitor here for 10 years. He was a quiet, older gentleman with a gentle smile and hands that were always busy, always working. He wore a simple gray uniform, slightly faded at the elbows, and moved his cleaning cart with the quiet dignity of a man who knew his worth, even if the world overlooked him. He was focused on polishing the mahogany table in the boardroom, his rhythm steady, a soft cloth moving in slow, perfect circles. He never looked up. He just worked. Lena usually paid Marcus no mind. He was part of the background, like the air conditioning hum or the distant traffic sound. But tonight, his presence felt an insult. How could he be so calm, so steady, while her world was fracturing? She watched him from a distance. She noticed how careful he was, making sure the wood shone perfectly, reflecting the bright overhead lights. He didn't rush. He didn't cut corners. He cleaned her floor, the floor that represented the massive wealth and power that was slipping through her fingers. A wave of frustration, exhaustion, and cruel, dark humor washed over her. It was the feeling you get when you want to scream, but all that comes out is a nervous, inappropriate laugh. She remembered the financial reports spread out on her desk. Charts, graphs, technical indicators, all useless now. She had listened to the best Harvard MBAs, the top analysts, the most expensive consultants in the country, and they had all led her to this disaster. Marcus finished the table, gave it a final check, and then started neatly folding his cleaning cloths, arranging them perfectly on his cart. Lena took a deep breath. She didn't mean to do this. It was mean, but she felt trapped, and sometimes trapped people lash out at the safest target. She needed to break the suffocating silence. She needed to feel superior, just for a moment, to convince herself she still had power. "Mr. Marcus," she called out, her voice sharp and echoing in the silence. Marcus stopped instantly. His back straightened, but he didn't turn around right away. He waited, respectfully, letting the authority in her voice settle. Finally, he turned. His face was kind, but his eyes, deep-set and wise, held a neutral expression. "Yes, Miss Lena?" His voice was low, smooth, and steady. "Come here," she commanded, walking back toward the huge glass wall overlooking the city's financial district. She gestured grandly to the glittering view, a landscape of billions of dollars. "Look at that, all that money, all those decisions, all that pressure." Marcus slowly pushed his cleaning cart a little closer, leaving it parked neatly by the marble pillar. He stood about 10 feet away from her,
his hands clasped respectfully in front of him. He waited. He didn't ask what she needed, knowing the request was something far more complicated than a spill to clean up. "I have a decision to make," Lena continued, her voice tight and manic, not looking at him but at her reflection in the glass. "A very, very important decision that will either save $500 million or lose it forever. My team, they're useless. They only feed me charts and jargon. I need a fresh perspective, a truly unbiased view." She finally turned, letting her eyes rest on Marcus's calm, simple uniform. Her lips curved into a tight, humorless smile. It was a terrible joke, but she was going to play it anyway. She was going to see what happens when the Queen of Finance asks the janitor for advice. It would be absurd, and maybe the absurdity would make her feel better.
The air crackled between them. Marcus stood still, a study in patience. Lena was vibrating with stress and disbelief at her own actions. The joke felt heavy and wrong the moment it left her mouth. She knew she was pushing him, trying to force him into an impossible, humiliating position, but the stress had control of her now. She felt a sick kind of relief in the release of tension. "So, Marcus," she said, her voice dripping with forced condescension. She was performing for the empty room, for the city outside, for her own failing confidence. "You see this whole floor. You clean up after the biggest players in the world. You hear everything, don't you? Whispers, loud phone calls, big arguments. You see the stress lines fade and reappear on the faces of every single director." Marcus nodded slowly, his eyes still steady. "I keep my ears open, Miss Lena, but mostly I keep my mind on my job." "Of course you do," she scoffed, dismissing his dignity. "But tonight, your job is to give me advice. I need to make a massive, risky move with this sinking investment. My analysts are split. I either have to double down, put in another $20 million to try and float it back up, or I need to cut my losses completely and sell everything off right now, before the market opens." She walked closer to him, closing the respectful distance. "Now look at me, Marcus. I want you to pretend you are the CEO. No charts, no Harvard degrees, just your gut. The wise, silent man who watches it all from the shadows. Tell me, should I hold on to the dream and risk more, or should I take the loss and walk away?" She looked directly into his eyes, daring him to fail, daring him to say something ridiculous so she could laugh and release the pressure. It was a moment of supreme, reckless power on her part, an expression of her own internal chaos. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't lower his eyes. He paused, not like a man trying to think of an answer, but like a man carefully choosing the right words to deliver a difficult truth. The silence stretched out, becoming thicker than the mahogany dust he had just cleaned. Lena felt her heart pounding, not from fear of his answer, but from the realization of how low she had sunk. "It's a joke, of course," she quickly added, trying to retract the moment, suddenly feeling ashamed. "It's just the pressure talking, Marcus. Go back to your work. Forget I asked." She turned away, walking back toward her desk, wanting the whole awkward exchange to vanish. But Marcus's voice stopped her dead in her tracks. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a finely honed blade. "Miss Lena?" She turned back. He had moved forward a step. His hands were still respectfully clasped, but there was a new light in his eyes, a depth she had never noticed before, like looking into a deep well. "What I see," Marcus said, his voice measured and calm, his U.S. Black English cadence slow and resonant, drawing her in. "What I see is that beautiful desk you got, the beautiful floors, the view." He paused, letting her think he was going to talk about the physical wealth, the superficial things she herself had just pointed out. But then he shifted, and the tone of his voice changed entirely. "But I also see you," he continued.
I see you working here, sometimes until 3 a.m. I see you sleeping on that couch when the deals were tight. I see you crying softly one time a year back after that merger almost fell apart. And I see how you look right now." He lowered his gaze slightly, but kept talking. "I also saw that young woman, Miss Chloe, that worked on the 5th floor. She was saving up for her mother's kidney transplant. She had her whole life savings in your company's retirement plan. She trusted you. She trusted Titan Global." Lena's breath caught in her throat. Marcus had seen her cry? He knew Chloe? He didn't just see the dirt. He saw the human cost and the emotional landscape of her whole company. The suspense wasn't about the market anymore. It was about what Marcus truly knew. He looked up again, his expression now one of deep compassion mixed with a quiet demand for integrity. "So when you ask me, Miss Lena, if you should throw more money into a hole, or if you should cut losses," he said, taking another gentle, deliberate step closer, "you're not asking about a company. You're asking about trust. You're asking about Miss Chloe's mother. That is the true weight of your $500 million. Lena felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't a joke anymore. This was a confrontation, gentle but profound, about the very soul of her business. Her mind raced, trying to find a witty retort, a way to dismiss him, but his sincerity had built an emotional wall around her. He wasn't giving her financial advice. He was giving her moral guidance, wrapped in the suspense of a high-stakes decision. She was frozen, waiting, hanging on the thread of his next word. He had taken her power, not by shouting, but by speaking quiet, simple, undeniable truth.
Marcus took a final soft breath, the moment hanging suspended in the wealthy, sterile air. Lena felt the shame of her earlier cruelty, the joke she intended to play burn off, replaced by raw anticipation. She realized this man wasn't just observing the mess. He was evaluating the mess maker. He looked directly at her, his expression now serious and focused, as if he were reading a highly complex financial statement. Then he spoke, and Lena froze at his first words. "That asset you bought?" he said, his voice firm. "The one that's sinking? The clean energy one?" Lena's eyes widened, her jaw slackening. How do you know which one it is? I never said a word." Marcus offered a small, knowing smile. "I clean the shredders, Miss Lena. But I also see the papers you leave out on the conference room table when you rush out. And that little energy company, its name is NovaSpark. I've been reading about them." He paused, letting the shock settle. Lena had been so focused on the analysts and CEOs that she forgot the man who saw every discarded memo and every stressed-out face. Then he leaned forward just a fraction, lowering his voice, giving his advice not as a janitor, but as a knowledgeable peer. "Their CEO, Mr. Vance, he's only selling stock now to panic the market, Miss Lena. It's called a bear trap. He's trying to shake out the weak players, the ones who get scared and sell cheap, so he can buy their shares back right before he announces the real news." Lena felt a dizzying wave of realization. A bear trap. It was an old, dangerous move, a legal but ruthless tactic. Her highly paid analysts had been too focused on the technical indicators and the surface-level panic to consider the brutal human strategy behind the movement. But Marcus, the observer, the one who saw the bigger picture of human greed and ambition played out in the scraps of paper, had seen it. "The real news," Marcus continued, the suspense of his quiet confidence holding her captive, "is the patent. It got approved 3 days ago, not rejected. It's their new battery design. Mr. Vance's team was celebrating in the kitchen last night when I was mopping, talking about how they were going to be heroes by the weekend." Lena stumbled backward and gripped the edge of her desk. The cold, logical data she had been staring at for hours had blinded her. She'd been looking at the numbers, but Marcus had been watching the people. "So you're saying," she whispered, her powerful CEO voice cracked with emotion, "I'm saying
You have a choice, Miss Lena. You can panic, sell out low, and be just another person he shakes out of the game, or, Marcus finished, his face softening with a final paternal wisdom, you can hold strong. Show Mr. Vance that Titan Global doesn't break. You don't have to put in more money. You just have to have the courage to wait. Lena looked from his gentle, honest eyes to the terrifying glowing numbers on her monitor. She saw the truth in his steady gaze, a truth built not on algorithms, but on simple, human observation and trust. The outcome was completely unexpected. Instead of laughing or selling, Lena did something she hadn't done in years. She followed a pure, selfless gut feeling, a feeling Marcus had helped her rediscover. She opened her internal trading terminal and typed one simple command: hold. She didn't move. She just stared at Marcus. The janitor, the overlooked man, had seen the whole game from the outside, while the queen had been trapped inside the castle. Thank you, Marcus. She managed to say, the words thick with genuine emotion. Marcus nodded, collected his cleaning cloth, and pushed his cart away. Get some rest, Miss Lena. You earned it. The next morning, the market opened. The Nova Spark stock tanked one last time, hitting rock bottom. The panicked sellers sold everything. Then, at 10 a.m., the Nova Spark CEO held an emergency press conference announcing the successful patent approval for the revolutionary battery. The stock did not just recover, it skyrocketed, doubling its previous high. Lena watched the screens flood with green, her $500 million investment not just saved, but now worth nearly $1 billion. She had survived not because of her brilliant team, but because of the man who cleaned their floors. Later that day, she called Marcus to her office. He stood there, waiting for his thank you, maybe a bonus. Lena didn't give him a check. Instead, she offered him a new job title: Executive Advisor of Corporate Oversight, Strategy, and Human Dynamics. A title created just for him. His office, right next to hers. His salary, an analyst's. Marcus didn't need the money. He needed respect. He just smiled. A deep, genuine smile of acceptance. I'd be happy to keep the floors clean too, Miss Lena. Can't lose sight of the small things that matter. Lena realized she hadn't just saved her company, she had gained a true, invaluable partner. She had learned that the most profound wisdom often comes not from those who talk the loudest, but from those who stop and observe the simple, silent human truth.